Namaste, greetings from Govardhan Eco Village. In this educational series videos of Ayurveda, today we will be discussing about the asanas as per your Prakriti or the yogic approach and Ayurveda. So this topic will be really essential if you're looking for combining yoga therapy and Ayurvedic treatments together. And also, if you are a yoga teacher, this will be a really helpful information for you to start inculcating the Ayurvedic Prakriti aspects into the yoga practice. So let's start the presentation. So most of us have some idea about yoga today. Yoga as a popular exercise trend for many all over the world. Yoga as an alternative medical therapy. Many people are now looking towards yoga for healing their back pain, lifestyle disorders like diabetes, hypertension, hormonal imbalances, etc. Many people also see yoga as a profound spiritual path. So there are different ways where yoga is gaining popularity all over the world. There's a common human quest for health, happiness, and enlightenment. Therefore, it is not a surprise to say that yoga is really gaining recognition worldwide. If you see, every small corner on the streets has a yoga class and a yoga teacher. So they're everywhere available in a great abundance. In every town, there are some ashrams, studios, gyms, spa, health center. Everywhere, yoga is promoted and taught. So it's nothing new as such. But it is very important to understand this one concept here when we are connecting yoga to healing or yoga to Ayurveda, that yoga is much more than an exercise system, which is what people usually say when they say they are practicing yoga. Actually, they mean that they are folding themselves into some postures. But yoga is much more than that. It has the extraordinary healing potential for both body as well as mind. So, yoga addresses not only the structural imbalances in the body, like bone and joint problems, through various physical practices and warm ups, but addresses some organic dysfunctions, including that of hormonal imbalances or immune system disorders. No wonder why, in this current COVID 19 times, the practice of yoga is also quite popularized and promoted. In addition, particularly through its mindfulness methods, the awareness aspect of yoga, where one is recommended to focus and be aware while doing the asanas on different sensations, on the flow of the breath, etc. So, through this approach, yoga has the potential to treat nervous system disorders, emotional tensions, various psychological difficulties of all types related to stress or to up to psychosis. And because of this healing purpose that yoga offers, or mainly I would say the posture and pranayam practice offers, it is closely aligned with the healing science of life with Ayurveda. So, yoga and Ayurveda are sister sciences that grew up from the same root in the ancient India. As yogic healing becomes emphasized, and many people are turning to yoga for therapy, as I mentioned earlier, whether it's back pain, hypertension, hormonal imbalances, there are different personalized sequences that are designed for certain disorders in the body. So it's very important that we turn our gaze to Ayurveda as well, because that's a natural healing science as well. So when we look at yoga therapy or yoga as therapy, practices are not given mechanically. It's not a random class of some movements, but some personalized sequence is given or depending on the individual's need, the sequence is designed. So, an understanding of our individual constitution of how we are designed, both physically and psychologically, is extremely important for healing ourselves. And this aspect brings yoga back to Ayurveda, which provides the traditional mind and body typology for yoga practice. Let's understand the importance of now individual orientation as far as healing or getting better or for optimized health is concerned. So, whether it is a diet, exercise, or anything, even some personal practices for healing, lot of emphasis is given on the individual's nature, that what is the right practice for us. We are now recognizing more and more that each individual is designed and made up very differently, right? So the food that is good for one person, for example, even if it's wholesome, very healthy, and maybe person A finds it really nice, but maybe the other person may find it not so good for himself or herself. So even the food practices, they are sometimes the diet plans, especially nowadays, you see so many of them are there. They are also quite personalized in that way, including when herbs and exercise also require an individualized orientation. And we all know that the same things cannot work for all the body types. So the question here comes that what is our type and what kind of yoga should we follow for it? Particularly if I'm speaking about yoga, then I need to know which asanas or what kind of approach of yoga postures is best for us. And this will definitely depend on our body type, or what we refer to as a typology that we use to describe ourselves. Nowadays, in the modern world, there are a lot of ways where we describe people, or the different types of typologies are there. But yoga and Ayurveda contain their own profound system of typology that has been proven, time tested through thousands of years of experience. Yoga and Ayurveda show our body mind types according to the energies and elements that predominate within us. So, the energy wise, the Ayurveda says that we have these three doshas. And I'm sure if you have heard of the different classes that have been going on the Ayurveda educational series, you are now quite familiar with these names and the prakritis, the three doshas of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. And even yoga says that we have three gunas, mental qualities of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. So, having said this about the typology, let's understand a little bit about the requirements of the optimum health plan. Since we know, okay, this is the typology and I may fall into one of this. So, what is the requirement of the optimal health plan now? So, for optimal health, we require an individual diagnosis and treatment plan that addresses our specific needs, not merely a general or standardized prescription. This is very common in a regular yoga class, or where everybody is coming from different backgrounds, maybe with different needs, but they end up doing the same class. Of course, benefits are there, but we are talking about here more optimal health plan, healing plan. This is where we require more specific plan. And this is where the importance of Ayurveda comes, which rests on a very precise constitutional model that, okay, what is my constitutional body type? So it prescribes the individual treatment plans and also some lifestyle changes that encompasses all the aspects of our behavior, physical, mental, etc. So through Ayurveda, we gain a proper understanding of our own unique nature, physically, mentally, how we are, so that our yoga practice is also very relevant to who we are and to our particular condition at the time of practice. So this is the requirements of optimal health plan, especially when it comes to healing some disorders. We need more personalized, specific plan for the healing. Now let's understand a little bit of merging or a marriage of the combination of yoga and Ayurveda for healing. So what does Ayurveda offer? Ayurveda offers a unique system of treatment based upon lifestyle adjustments, dietary plans, different kind of Ayurvedic recipes are shared considering your particular body type. Powerful herbal formulas are given, and of course, they also do emphasis on yoga and meditation. So, Ayurveda's profound classification of mind body type provides a very clear assessment of individual constitution, and then how to treat it in a very wholesome way, holistically, considering all the aspects of lifestyle, attitude, behavior, food, exercise, considering everything in place. This makes Ayurveda an ideal practice for disease prevention, promotion of longevity, and overall increasing our creative powers. So, let's see how people view Ayurveda and yoga now together or individually. Ayurveda has become a major part in what we call the second phase of interest in yoga. So, being a yoga teacher, I have personally experienced this that everybody who comes for yoga naturally develops this quality, the mode of, going towards a sattva or goodness where they want to change and improve their lifestyle. And Ayurveda gives them the ready-made plan like that how you can come to a more holistic and more lifestyle, which is very good for your optimum health. So, what we can call is the second phase of interest in yoga is Ayurveda, which is as a therapy and a very good tool for healing. And this builds up upon the first phase of interest in yoga as an exercise system, which is very popular. So, people who are looking into the therapeutic aspect of yoga are naturally nowadays drawn to Ayurveda because of the nice historical ancient affinity between these two systems. As the healing aspect of yoga continues to develop, its Ayurvedic connections must continue to unfold. So, I can personally say that very few schools, people, or books talk about this merging in a very systematic way. It is still very random that yes, yoga does speak about Ayurveda in terms of different language that you should have a good lifestyle, mental attitude. So in a way, it is does speaking about lifestyle. And also Ayurveda speaks about the exercise as per your body type. But still, there are less specifications as mentioned. So definitely, both being healing sciences for well-being needs to be explored in connection with each other. So, having understood the connection, let's understand the Ayurveda's exercise prescription. Since we are precisely talking about the asana, postures, and yoga and Ayurveda, let's understand that how does Ayurveda prescribes in the treatment plan and an aspect of exercise. So, Ayurvedic treatment includes exercise prescriptions for maintaining good health and for treating specific diseases. It's always there. It's not just herbs or diet plan or a lifestyle. Even exercise is very much integral part of the holistic healing plan that you take through Ayurveda. So, according to Ayurvedic science, we should follow a type of exercise, or in this context, the yogic postures or asanas that agrees with our individual constitution, which is Vata, Pitta, or Kapha, as defined according to the doshas. So, for this reason, Ayurveda prescribes asanas based upon the doshic or our body type implications. So let's precisely see these three doshas, which are like the energies of health, the Ayurvedic energies of health. I'm sure again you must have already heard the previous classes and upcoming classes, which are personally going to focus on this by our Ayurvedic doctors. So for more details, if you haven't gone through those videos, please go through those videos too, which gives you a very detailed understanding of each prakriti and how you can also identify, because obviously when we are talking about the personalized approach of your practice of asanas, you must know your prakriti first. So for that, you can refer to the previous videos which does speak about the details of each of this prakriti and how do you know what is your prakriti. So Just a precise recollection of the information again, that Ayurveda recognizes three forms of pranic or a life force or energy as the basis for health and diseases for all people. And there are these three doshas or biological humors of vata, air, pitta, the fire, and kapha, water. Okay. So this wind, bile, and mucus are the three main forms of toxins that cause pain and disease as they accumulate in the body. So dosha means also like something that is hindering or like can bring about some imbalance if they are like not in a healthy proportion in the body. So, what does this each one do precisely? So, the wind causes dryness, stiffness, nervousness, and debility. Bile, which is a form of fire, it can cause the imbalance. I'm talking about the imbalance in the doshas right now. It can cause infection, inflammation, bleeding, and fever. And mucus, the kapha, causes congestion, edema, and obesity. Now, this was a very precise understanding. Let's talk about the effects of asanas and doshas. So, what is the purpose of asana practice? As if we have to purview it from the Ayurvedic perspective, every asana has its own individual benefit on our different organs physically, on also on our physiology as well as the psychological aspect of our beings. But if I have to view it from the Ayurvedic point of view, from that binoculars, then the purpose of asana is to keep the doshas in their proper flow, to sustain them as a forces which brings more health and vitality to our beings. So it aims at preventing the doshas from accumulating at their primary site. So you would know that every every dosha has its primary site, and this is where if they keep on getting accumulated at the more extent, then we have this imbalance or disorders of that particular area also sometimes. So vata is mostly the large intestine, pitta is small intestine, and kapha is stomach, and that's where they are starting the disease processes. So asana with its soothing, stretching, and relaxing action. So we have different types of asanas, which brings about this different benefits or experiences to us. Sometimes they are very soothing and calming, grounding. They can bring stability. They can stretch the body. They have relaxing aspect too. So asanas with its soothing, stretching, and relaxing action is the main physical exercise for balancing this dosha. It can calm the vata, it cools the pitta, and releases the kapha. So, all these doshas are always intertwined in every function that they do in our bodies. So, we have to work on them systematically, step by step. So, vata is the carrier, which means it's a moving force that keeps everything in the body circulating and working. Pitta pushes and provokes, which means it's a transformational force that causes things to change from one condition to another, like food becoming tissue through the digestive fire. Example. And kapha strengthens or resists. So kapha is a sustaining force that upholds the previous condition, whether it's health or disease. Now, the imbalance dosha, and there are some psychological implications too. So, we precisely spoke about what the imbalance can cause. Of course, under every imbalance, the main umbrella, the list of diseases can be mentioned, but this is out of our purview right now in this asana Ayurveda concept. So, for those, you can definitely refer to the different lectures that we have been already giving here. So, precisely speaking, again, the imbalanced doshas have some implications. Vata or wind, if in excess, can create fear and anxiety, which results from the feelings of ungroundedness and instability. This is an important point to discuss here, all of these points, because somewhere we will be connecting them to our asana practice. So we want to heal all these things, the quality of vata, the strength and weakness of vata, how to improve it and how to balance it. So pitta or a fire creates anger. The consequence is because of too much of heat or passion in our body system. And kapha as water creates greed and attachment, the states of clinging on to or holding on to something, not letting go. So this is about the psychological implications of the imbalanced doshas. Now, before we understand what is the yogic approach to our, dosha practice or Ayurvedic practice, so let's understand the classical view of asanas. Why it is why it is important to understand the classical perspective is because nowadays in modern times, asanas are only viewed as an exercise, which it is not. It has various deeper benefits to all the layers of our existence. When I say all the layers of our existence, I'm referring here to our body, breath, and mind together. This is where we're going to mix it with Ayurveda and bring about more benefits as far as healing is concerned. The modern concept of asana is only to work out or sweat or be physically fit, which is nothing wrong about it, but that's a very uh, limited understanding of asana if you're really looking for asana to heal yourself. Or sometimes the asana is used as some medicine or a pill. Okay, I have this disorders, I have this disorder, and I'm going to do the asana A, B, and C, and I'm going to be fine. But honestly speaking, if the body, breath, and mind aspect are not inculcated in the practice, there'll be hardly any benefits. Yes, the person may have some physical fitness and good flexibility and strength to the muscle because body is moving after all. But if breath and mind, these aspects are not there, the healing is not going to be the holistic. It's not going to be addressing the deep rooted cause of your disorders. So that is the reason it is very important to first make our base clear on the view of how does asana work for us. Then we can nicely connect it with the Ayurveda. So, first aspect is asana as a physical structure. This is very common and we all know it. In asana practice, we place the body into a specific position and that has a specific result as well. And each asana has its own structural effect. For example, if I am in some sitting pose while meditating, then that sitting pose has the benefit of grounding me or making a nice tripod of my body, giving me a nice foundation on which I can build up my other practices. Likewise, some hip opening asana, some back bend, some forward bend. Every physical structure has some benefit for my physical body. Now, second important aspect, asana as pranic energy, or if we are new to this concept of the word prana, then we can refer to as right now as the breath. But prana basically means the vital force or vital energy in the body. So our physical body, which is like a manifestation outside, which we see easily, is a vehicle for our internal energies which are traveling, facilitating the function of our physical body, and which are defined through prana. And asanas are the vehicles through which prana is directed. So when we are moving our body in a particular way, we're also directing the prana and helping the prana to flow very nicely. The pranic impulse behind the asana is as important as the asana itself. This means that depending upon how we direct our prana, the same asana can take us to different places. For example, I am sitting in a meditative pose, which means basically, when I say meditation pose, or a very grounding, stable, right? But if I do the fast breathing, like for example, if you're aware about the practice called as Vastrika, it's a dynamic breathing. Or if I'm doing some very quick breaths for cleansing. So that is going to take my energy up, right? So although I am in a very static position physiologically, but my prana is going up. So you see, even the different poses also, how we direct the prana through different poses has the ability to bring about some changes on our pranic level. So, sitting in a comfortable, calming pose, but if I breathe faster, which means that I'm taking my prana up and energizing myself. So, every pose, every asana, we can direct our prana wherever we want. So this pranic energetics of an asana depend upon various factors like including how quickly we do the posture, not just breathing in the static pose as I mentioned in an example, but when we are taking and releasing the posture, how quickly we do it. What is the degree of force we use? And above all, how are we breathing during holding or taking and releasing our poses? So all this determines the energy aspect or the pranic aspect of our asanas and how do we guide it faster, slower, etc. And third important aspect, again, quite at times neglected when asanas are viewed as just an exercise or a physical form. Asana are also mind, like as our thought and intention. So asana is not just only the structural and energy thing, but also reflects through our thought and intention. We could call asana a thoughtful or mindful form of exercise. The effect of the same asana will vary depending upon whether our mind is clear or cloudy. So if we are sad, we are thinking something, or our mind is traveling elsewhere, the impact of that pose on the layers of our existence, like body, breath, and mind, will be completely different. And if our emotions are like either they are calm or turbulent, depending on that, it will direct the prana basically, because we know the connection between the mind and the breath, right? When we get angry sometimes, we know that anger is state of mind. It's a thought, it's a state of mind. But the breath gets like faster or shallow, erratic, rapid, something happens to the breath. So, which means that the pranic and the mental body are really connected. So, when I also talk here, the mental aspect, I'm channelizing the pranic aspect too while doing the asana in this way. So basically, the point is here that asana should be a kind of meditation in the form. You know, you're creating some shape of your body, but you have to be mindful about what? About how you feel on the different areas, not being judgmental or analyzing, but just observing and becoming aware of the different sensations that arise or different muscles or different areas or how you feel when you breathe in and out, what happens. So all this part is like a kind of a meditation in the movement. If our consciousness, that is our attention, awareness, is not engaged during the asana, then honestly speaking, our practice remains at a very superficial level. As I mentioned, you may have some physical fitness, but no deeper changes at the pranic or the mental level or healing takes place if it is very superficial, right? So now let's come to the twofold doshic application of asana, how to apply the asanas in an Ayurvedic perspective to our dosha. So there are two ways usually this is done in a class according to the constitution of the individual defined by the doshic types. So even if you are vata, pitta, kapha, whatever your dosha is, or mostly it is the intermixtures. Like nobody is mostly one. It's like vata, pitta, kapha, vata, kapha, etc. So different like combinations are there having all of these two doshas together mostly. So understanding that first and then applying it in your asana practice. And we're going to see how to do that. And the second aspect is we spoke about the every dosha having their particular site in the body. So depending on that also different asanas can stimulate those areas and bring about the doshic balance. So relative to the impact of asanas on the dosha, as a general physiological functions. Each dosha has its site and actions in the body, and that asanas will affect depending upon how we orient them in a different way. So, let's understand the impact of asanas on doshas. So, since vata energy is impulsive and erratic, how do we do it? How do we tackle this situation now in asana class. And of course, we'll come to in more detail in the next slide. So vata must be gently restrained because of its impulsive and erratic thing, and supported, grounded, and stabilized. We will gradually transport all this information to our asana class. And in the next slide, I'll explain you how to, what should be our approach if we have this particular prakriti. Now, pitta energy is focused and penetrating and can cut and harm. So it must be gently relaxed and diffused. Kapha energy is resistant and complacent. So it must be moved and stimulated, right? So now let's understand precisely the vata and what do we do when we are on our yoga mats? Okay. Uh, when I say this, of course, we will be also quickly reviewing the practices to be done by each prakriti type, body type. But honestly, the different asanas can be done. We cannot put it in a box that vata person should not do this asana or that asana. But of course, there are few ready reckoner practices, but it is not limited to only that. You can do a holistic class. However, you have to basically focus more on the following aspects, that what you should be doing with your body if you're vata, what you should be doing with your prana and mind, and some general reminders for each prakriti. Okay, so everybody's predominant. So when I say vata, you're mainly vata and pitta, so you can focus more on the vata because that's more of a that defines you. So these are some ready reckoner guideline on your approach to the different asanas that you will do in your yoga practice. So some general recommendations are, you have to keep your energy firm, even and consistent throughout the practice, and sustain your enthusiasm. Now, what is your body doing? How it should be while you're doing the asanas? What should be your consciousness? So keep the body, for the body, keep the body calm, centered, and relaxed. Do the asana slowly, gently, and without undue or sudden use of force. We have to avoid the abrupt movements, use strong muscles. Okay? Now, prana wise, keep the breath deep. About the breath, calm and strong, emphasizing on inhalations. Because if you see vata, erratic, impulsive, so we have to focus on more grounding, stabilizing, and that's why these recommendations. Mind, what should be your thought while you are, holding the pose or doing the asana? Keep the mind calm and concentrated, grounded in the present moment. Right? Next, pitta. The general recommendations are, keep your energy cool, open, and receptive, like a new vaccine mode. What is the bodily recommendation? While doing the asanas, try to keep your body cool and relaxed. Do the asanas in a surrendering manner to remove heat and tension from the body. What is to be done with your prana or your breathing? Again, keep the breath cool, relaxed, and diffused. Exhale through the mouth to relieve heat as needed, especially in few asanas if needed. Even a nice soft exhalation through the mouth can calm you down. Mind, keep the mind receptive, detached, and aware, but not sharp, analytical, or critical. And the kapha. General recommendations, make sure to warm up properly and then do the asana with effort, speed, and determination. Now, kapha, we need to trigger it, move it. So that is the reason we need to put little effort, speed, and determination into our practice. The body has to be light and moving, warm and dry. Prana, the breath. Keep the prana upward moving and circulating. Take deep, rapid breaths if necessary to maintain that energy level, enthusiasm. And the mental state for the person with kapha prakriti should be keeping the mind enthusiastic, wakeful, and focused like a flame. So you see, this is such a nice recommendation that you don't have to really kind of stick to few asanas for your body type. You can do most of all the practices. Of course, you can avoid some practices which brings imbalance to you at that point of time if you're healing some disorder. But generally, if you are doing a self practice, the approach is more important than the list of practices, to be honest. So I'm going to come to the list as well, but that's a very generic list again. It is not that you have to only do those practices, but whatever you do, if you have this approach, then definitely you are addressing it very personally to who you are, your body type, and your typology, kapha, vata, pitta, and then you are using that approach for your body, breath, and mind, and that will definitely give you generalized benefits as well as healing will take place here. So, in the end, let's quickly discuss some list of practices for individual doshas which are good. So, every dynamic movement is basically reducing kapha. Maintaining the position for longer time, stability, grounding aspect is reducing vata, and relaxing the body parts. That is the approach of kind of uh, relaxing, letting go is reducing pitta in the body. Various pranayam practices can reduce excess of doshas and balances them. However, if done in the wrong way, it can also bring imbalance. So you need an expert advice always as far as some practices are concerned. Cleansing techniques, just like how Ayurveda has Panchakarma, even yoga has something called in Hatha Yoga as Shatkarma, the cleansing practices. Very similar, but definitely Ayurveda has more specific as per Prakriti and more specific with some herbs, etc. In yoga, it's more of a generic practice, but very important to kind of balance the three doshas as well. So let's quickly read out the list of practices for Vata. If you are familiar with yoga practices, I'm sure you will connect to these names. However, if you're not, never mind, you're always welcome to our Eco Village to explore more of Ayurveda and yoga and have a personalized plan for you. So, Pawan Muktasan series for Vata, which is a joint moving action. Vata people are more mainly tend to some joint disorders. So, moving the joints on a regular basis is very good practice for them. Grounding meditative asanas are really important. Okay, and different asanas like Bhujangasana, Ustrasana, Shalabhasana. Again, because the location of the vata, depending on the intestine, it's very important to stimulate those areas too. Again, for grounding and stability purpose, balancing poses are recommended for vata personalities. And as far as pranayam is concerned, the balancing pranayam, which is alternate nostril breathing, Surya Bhedan, again to tackle with the cold related problem like arthritis, Surya Bhedan. And again for grounding, stability, and little stable mind, state of mind, Brahmari pranayam is also recommended. There's a specific mudra where we internalize all our senses. So mainly vata means erratic, traveling, impulsive. So you want to have more grounding through some mudras, which closes all the senses and doing some breath work. So Shanmukhi mudra is one of the mudra recommended for vata personalities. And some yogic cleansing practices like Neti, the nasal cleansing, Basti, the yogic enema, and Tratak, gazing, again, good for grounding. So these are some practices. Not only this, these are some pinpointed practices. Of course, other practices with the approach that we discussed can be done. Some practices for Pitta are, again, focusing on the location of where the Pitta is mainly accumulated is the abdominal region. So all the asanas which brings compression and tension to the abdominal region is highly recommended for Pitta personalities. Inversions can bring a relaxing effect to the brain. So inversion like shoulder stand, headstand, Viparit Karni. There are different asanas in inversion category that can be practiced for Pitta personalities. So Pitta means heat, fire. We discussed that. So some cooling pranayam like Shitali, Shitkari. These are cooling pranayam. They're very important for those who have Pitta disorders. And also the left nostril is our cool nostril in the body. As per the Yoga Shastra, the left nostril is the moon dominant or the cooling nostril. So that is why the left nostril pranayam is also recommended for pitta. Some cleansing practices as in yoga are vaman, the vomiting, the full body master cleanse, and nauli. Nauli is like where again we are working by isolating some of our abdominal muscles and rotating them internally. So that's a Nauli practice, very good for Pitta. Some practices for Kapha we need to kind of trigger it, move it. So now dynamic approaches here for Kapha. So Surya Namaskar, fast speed, dynamic, 24 minimum. I mean, it will take time to come to 24 if somebody has never done it, but ideally recommended number for them. Uh, Standing asanas are mainly dynamic, require strength and so moving. So very important practice for kapha people are some of the whole standing series that is mentioned here. And also to cut down on the excess mucus kapha, we need some heating practices. So some pranayam like Bhastrika, the fast breathing. Again, right nostril is related to the heat nostril, the sun principle in our body, unlike the left cool and right warm, hot. So right nostril breathing is very important. Again, the dynamic practice of Kapalabhati is recommended, and Ujjayi, energizing. Ujjayi is an energizing pranayam, so recommended for kapha personalities. Some cleansing techniques to bring out the excess mucus or kapha dosha from the body are Vaman, Vastradhauti, Danda. There are all types of cleansing practices which brings out the excess mucus. Nauli, Agnisar again to break down the kapha. So these are some kind of a ready reckoner for each practices. And last but not the least, the concluding note uh, that an asana may not be good for a particular doshic type doesn't mean that they should never do it. It means that they should practice the asana in a way. So in a way means what? We already saw the approach. So if Vata person is practicing, what should be his body, mind, breath approach, which should guard them against any potential imbalances. Okay. So again, a lot of things needs to be researched on this aspect. This is a very unique concept which has emerged now. It's not that Ayurveda and yoga never existed. It's been existing since a year, but the systematic merging is yet to take place. But I'm sure as many yoga therapists can and Ayurvedic doctors come together and merge this both these sister sciences nicely. I think the healing, the therapy world will have a new concept of doing asanas as per your prakriti for healing. So we have personally also tried this on many of our students who had some disorders and healing issues. So we have definitely seen some positive results. So if you are somebody who's looking forward to healing, you can definitely try this specific approach you've already practicing yoga. If you are a yoga therapist or yoga teacher, then this is something, a new area where you can intertwine the Ayurveda and yoga together. So I hope that you got some information about how you can now move on your mats after recognizing your particular prakriti. So thank you so much. Namaste.